According to the Vision 2030 document, the new dispensation is prioritizing the reorientation of the country towards democratization, respect for human and property rights, freedom of expression and association, rule of law, redressing of economic challenges, championing investment and business, improving the livelihoods of ordinary citizens, and re engaging with the international community. All this is aimed at towards building an upper middle income economy by 2030. The national constitution, on the other hand, has an expansive Bill of Rights. In fact, in its preamble, the constitution talks about the people being united in our diversity. It talks about our common desire for freedom, for justice, and equality. The preamble also talks about entrenching democracy, good, transparent, and accountable governance, and the rule of law, as well as reaffirming our commitment to upholding and defending fundamental human rights and freedoms. Our founding values and principles acknowledge a multi party democratic political system, an electoral system based on universal adult suffrage and equality and quality of votes, free and fair regular elections, and adequate representation of the electorate, orderly transfer of power, among other progressive principles. So, where are we getting it wrong? Now, to help me interrogate these issues, I have in studio with me, representing the Women's Coalition of Zimbabwe Politics and Decision Making Cluster, as well as the director for an organization, Whispers. I have Sibono Kuhle Wuhlungu. I hope I got your name correct.
Yes, you did. Thank
Welcome.
you. Thank you so much. It's good to have me here and to interact and discuss with you guys.
Excellent. I also have Varaizo Jo. She is coming through from the organization Grooming Women for Political Leadership, the Women Academy for Leadership and Political Excellence. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad I'm here.
Excellent. I also have online representing the Election Results Center, Mr. Takunda. Welcome, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So let's get right into it. I'm going to start with you, Takunda. When we talk of election as a human right, what does it mean to you?
I think when we're discussing elections as a human right, I think one of the key tenets towards any democracy is the citizens' ability to participate in political processes, the citizens' ability to participate in governmental issues. And the only way citizens are given a voice to participate in these socio-economic issues is through the ballot. And I think this is how elections become a human right, because the ballot is the means towards participation or participatory democracy.
Right. And Sibo, what does that mean to you?
Elections as a human right, I think the ability to vote and be voted for is at the fundamental core of most governments, where we are saying people should be able to participate in an election, and whether as candidates, being voters, or being voted for. And with that comes so many rights and freedoms, like he has rightfully said, the freedom of expression. It's actually the election process, or elections being a human right, should be an enjoyment.
Right.
Yes, before we talk of anything else, that on its own, that right should be a right that is fully enjoyed by every single citizen.
Right. And you, Vari?
For me,
The right to vote is a fundamental human right because it gives one the opportunity to participate, express what they want, and to choose the type of leadership that they want without coercion or being forced to do so.
Right.
So it becomes a human right issue.
Right. And what makes electoral conversations in Zimbabwe attractive? I'll start with you. I'll come to you, Mari. You just, because when we talk elections and we say we're going for campaigns, it seems like the adrenaline just rises. Somehow there's a negative atmosphere that sort of surrounds election. People begin to think, of course, people get excited about the season. They've got a candidate that they are pushing through. I mean, in the previous election, we had 23 presidential candidates, and I foresee such a situation happening again come 2023. But what makes the conversation unattractive?
Well, for me, I'll speak for the women's side.
Right.
I think the environment, the political environment in Zimbabwe is not really conducive. It's surrounded with political violence, sexual harassment, abuse towards women, especially to women. So most women then shun away from politics and electoral process because they kind of face violence through rape, through assault, different forms of violence. So that's why we end up having less women taking part in politics or in electoral process because of the violent nature of elections that we have in Zimbabwe.
Right. And Sibo?
I'll
your
speak
own
from a
observations?
young women's perspective. Like Baraita has said, more of fear of the unknown, fear of the violence that usually comes with elections. But for us as young women, there's no excitement because year in and year out when we have elections, we don't see more of the familiar faces like us, the young women. We know it's going to be a male dominant space. And without really saying blaming the nation as a whole, but from our own political parties, we start then wondering and fearing, okay, so how many political parties are going to field the young women? Okay, I'm supposed to be enjoying this election, but in the ballot or on the ballot papers, how many young women who I know understand the issues that we go through as young women will be there?
Right.
So when we speak elections for the young women, there is sadness more to say because we know already the just finished census spoke of women having more numbers. But why is it that when we are then going to go for an election, there will be less representation? Why is that happening? Why are we not pushing and enforcing for a 50-50 representation of women when elections come? So there is no excitement because we know our group, the women, will not be well represented.
Right. Takunda, the ladies here spoke from the perspective of women why the talk of why electoral conversations can be unattractive. I mean, if you look at this live show, for example, we have a few people joining in, but when we talk Makua and stuff like that, you have thousands, jumping into such conversations. What makes electoral conversations unattractive?
I think in terms of the attractiveness of electoral conversations, one key facet of ensuring increased participation is ensuring is creating an environment which is conducive for free and open participation. I think the failure to create this environment tends to creep onto the freedom that people feel or the freedom that people exercise, and this negatively impacts on the processes. So the failure to hold um, perpetrators of rights violations, the failure, as what I just said, the failure to hold perpetrators of political violence to account. I think all these issues conflate together, and once seen from a citizen's perspective, they create fear, they create intimidation, and all these contribute to, I think, negatively impacting on the participation of citizens in such kind of discourses, because you never know the kind of blowback that you're going to face from expressing one's opinion. Because I think, as people normally say, there's freedom of expression, but there's no freedom after expression.
After expression, yeah. Yeah. That's actually quite disturbing, given that our constitution does guarantee those rights, Takunda. So, if the constitution cannot protect me from fully expressing myself, what can?
So I think the one issue that we as citizens must demand always is the accountability of state institutions. We must hold state institutions to account. The reason why there was a new constitution is to ensure that citizens are able to express their constitutional rights fully. And there are so many of these institutions that are mandated to protect, mandated to preserve an electoral environment that is free, fair, and conducive for open participation. And I think these are some of the institutions that we as citizens must demand every day. We must hold these institutions to account. We've got the Human Rights Commission, we've got the National Peace and Reconciliation Commission, we've got the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, which handles electoral discourses. And I think these institutions, as well, I would say as citizens, we must always demand that these institutions be there to protect our interests, to protect our constitutional freedoms.
Mm, mm. Now, Takunda raises some really fundamental issues, and I know that earlier on you spoke about how the environment for women can be very, very difficult. But I want us to come to these institutions. Do I know as well, Pei, you've got academies where you train women. Why do you feel the need to train the women? When it comes to electoral issues. And given the environment that we've been talking about, are women receptive, of that message? And do they want to like really participate in such processes?
Okay, thank you. According to a survey that was done by WAUPE in 2019, it showed that three quarters of the women, young women mostly in Zimbabwe, are not aware of the electoral processes. They really do not know what electoral processes are. They really do not know what their rights are when it comes to voting, when it comes to
Right.
political participation. So for us, there is need for us to go out there and then facilitate and equip and capacitate these young women with knowledge and skills so that they can be able to take part in these electoral processes, so that they can be able to demand their rightful rights. So we feel there is still need to reach out to all the young women in Zimbabwe and teach them about the electoral processes and about their rights and encourage them to use their rights, especially the rights to vote and to be voted for.
Right, Varaizo. Sibo, is it that people don't understand their rights, or like what Takunda, the image that Takunda has painted for us, that the general disregard or the lack of accountability by the varied institution could be a big turn off to women?
I think from experience and some of the activities that we have been doing now and up to date, most people do not know their rights. Yes,
Right.
what Sakunda has said is true, but also not taking away the fact that most people do not know their rights.
Right.
I'll tell you that, Yvonne, to date, we still have women who do not have enough documentation that will allow them to be able to participate in the coming election. So it's also part of the work that we continue doing to say, let's assist people to get the proper documents and to go and register to vote or be voted for again. So most of them do not understand. They do not even understand that this is very important and that an election is actually won by 50 plus one.
Right.
So that one vote can actually cost us a lot. So there is need for us to continue to do more awareness, more conscientizing of people, assisting them, and really continue with these teachings and partnering with the Zimbabwe Election Commission in terms of disseminating information.
Right. Takunda, just as we try to round up this conversation, we don't want to be long because we also understand that people get to drag on and they just shut down. But if you're just joining us, we're coming to you live from our Zimbabwe Daily Studios, and we are talking elections. This series that I'm starting now is Understanding Democracy Conversations. And the reason why we are trying to understand democracy is because we feel that people need to become interested and vested in what is happening. After all, it's a constitutional right that we have. Universal suffrage is there in the Constitution. One man, one vote is guaranteed within the Constitution. So why is it that conversations around elections in Zimbabwe continue to hover around the things that are just not working? So I just want to read a few comments that have come through here. We have Peishi, thank you so much for following. Courage, you say connected. How are you doing? We're doing well. Thank you so much. Japi J. Ngube, you're watching from Jocholo Lupane. I hope Kulupane, you are having conversations on elections, right? So that we get the country moving. Bless what Jikaramba. What Taura Itinzwe, let's hear you. Let's hear your voices, because the moment we shy away from talking about these issues, we get to be discouraged, and it doesn't encourage the next person to actually participate. So please, Blessword, we want to hear your own views. Aluad Shidodo says democracy doesn't work in Africa. It was created to divide people. Takunda, this one, I want you to make a comment on this assertion by Aluad Shidodo.
I think it's a very interesting assertion, but the reality of the matter is we cannot escape the democratic principles that bind our country. We cannot escape the constitutional principles that bind our country. And the foundational to these principles is the issue around participatory democracy, is the issue around elections being a conduit towards electing or selecting our preferred representatives. So it may be an opinion that one may feel, but the reality of it is we have a constitution that bases how we govern ourselves, and principle to this is ensuring that elections are a means towards, I think, ensuring participatory democracy.
Right. And we have Slim Joe, I would say, people know their rights but can't exercise them. Your views?
Well, I would say he is saying the truth, but then we go back to the issue of not having a conducive political environment
Right.
that doesn't allow people to fully exercise their rights.
Sibo.
Okay, so I still remain conflicted on that one, that people know their rights. Yes, because with knowing your rights, especially when we're talking of elections, there should be then there are freedoms that we highlighted earlier. The freedom to expression, the freedom to assembly peacefully,
Yes.
the freedom to associate.
Yeah.
So it's kind of very tricky, like maybe given those environments, that the minute you decide to say we want to assembly, what then happens after that?
Right.
So maybe, like I earlier on said, that maybe we need to continue like these programs that you are doing, and maybe have different stakeholders, the police themselves, because we've been beating around the bush in terms of highlighting that they're the major stakeholders or force
Right.
that are feared by people. So maybe in these conversations on the run to 2023 elections, they are the group that you need to bring on studio, so that they assure the people that, you know what, you are allowed, it's your freedom to
Right.
actually express yourself and not fear anything. So at times, because people just shy away and they think, okay, is this okay or not? When there comes an election, you should not be afraid to say the thoughts that you have, the fears that you have, without fearing what will happen afterwards, without fearing any intimidation.
Right.
So let's continue raising that awareness. But us as civic society organizations doing that is not enough, because we are not the lawmakers or the police at the end of the day. Those are the people that we need to then assure the citizens that they are protected and that they are allowed to assemble peacefully.
I love the passion in there. And Takunda, you see, what Sibo is actually talking about is one of the issues that really keeps me conflicted when it comes to issues to do with politics and governance in our country. And that's the very fact that our constitution is so rich. The Bill of Rights is very clear. The constitutional clauses are very, very clear in terms of the rights that an individual has, the right to association, the right to, freedom of expression, the different freedoms that we have guaranteed in the Constitution. But on the ground, the realities that we have do not speak to that. And I know if we were to ask you and say, what kind of an environment would be conducive for us to have an election that people will regard as generally free and fair. If we look at the Vision 2030 document, it's very clear on how society should run. If we look at the Constitution, like I've said, it's very clear. When we look at the different the roles of the police, the roles of the institutions supporting democracy, as you highlighted before, they are very clear in terms of what should happen and how things should run. But where are we getting it wrong? Why am I being beaten for choosing to associate with somebody? Why are the rights of somebody who is arrested not being upheld? Yet zvirimo mu constitution, naye Mr. Takunda.
I think one of the biggest problems we face as a nation involves the accountability of the perpetrators of these rights violations. I think this is a very big issue that needs to be addressed. It's a gap that needs to be divided between citizens and state institutions, where citizens feel like the state institutions are there to protect them from perpetrators of of rights violations. And I think this is a very big or problematic area, because in the current perspective, you've got cases or incidences of violence, cases and incidences of impunity, and accountability mechanisms, be it the courts, be it the Human Rights Commission, be it other state institutions that are there and that are meant to protect one's constitutional rights. The failure of these institutions is the reason why there's so much impunity, and I think it's really concerning. And I would like to reiterate that the failure of state institutions to protect the constitutional rights of citizens will ultimately lead to, I think, a failure of the governance system and a failure of the democratic principles that are there binding the Zimbabwean constitution and that are there binding, I think, our everyday life.
Right. And Peshi Mashidi says, great conversation, and I love what Walpe is doing. My question is, what are all the organizations represented doing to make sure women are given equal opportunities? Because it seems political parties are not giving women opportunities. Secondly, do you think PRS system is working to make sure we have more women in parliament? I see Peshi is very passionate about women in politics. Is 50-50 achievable? When we look at 2023, 2023, madzimai ari kupinda here?
Well, I would say it can be achieved if we are to push and work with political parties. I think if there is need for the women organization to engage political parties on issues of 50-50. Make sure that during their primary elections, they're fielding equal candidates, men and women. Make sure that when they're giving their list to ZEC, they're giving a list that has got 50 women, 50 men, so that we can be able to achieve 50-50. If it is done like that, then 50-50 can be achieved. And also then there is need for the government to align the Constitution and the Electoral Act so that they guarantee 50-50 representation.
Thank you so much, Sibo.
Yes, because Yvonne, actually the UN General Assembly, one of the resolutions that was there from 2011 was to encourage the member states to make sure that political parties support the full participation of women, and also that they make sure that they deal with the perpetrators of violence or those barriers that are put against the participation of women fully. So I wanted to pause even a question to say, think about it. We're coming from the by-elections where people were arrested for the political violence that occurred, and some dating back as 2018. But the question then remains, what was done?
Right.
what was done that then motivates us to think, okay, if someone does this in other countries, certain crimes, if a person is caught, they are either hanged there or whatever. But with us, what really practical examples do we have that we can say, remember those guys in 2018 or in by-election, 10 of them were arrested and sentenced to this. We do not have really practical verdicts that were given to perpetrators of violence. And on the 50-50 that you spoke of, on the 22nd, I'm not sure if I'm mixing dates, of July, the Women's Coalition of Zimbabwe launched the Women's Election Strategy, which talks about pushing for the 50-50 seats for women. And also, like Marita has rightfully put it, we are saying, can we have zebra lists coming from political parties? Yes, others will speak about the other institutions and the state. I still go back to political parties. This is where our winning point is at. If political parties make sure that the lists that they're sending out are 50-50 and there are zebra lines and there is full representation of both women and men, then we are good to go. But if we are hindered our participation from our own political parties, then that's a recipe for disaster. This is why at the end of the day, people suffer from heart attacks when it's time for elections or the lists are sent through, because you'll be expectant. You'll be expected that my name is going to be on the list. And finally, there is nothing. So maybe even those lists need to start coming out now to avoid surprises, so that we know exactly what we're dealing with.
Interesting. So we are talking election in Zimbabwe, and we are looking at mechanisms that we need to put in place in order to make the conversations of elections attractive, right? And Chamuno da Gorimbo says the distance which some people have to travel just to go and register to vote is just discouraging. The number of registration centers should be increased. And Obed contends that as much as we know our rights and yet we don't have power to exercise them. And Slim says the fact is that our constitution has become a big problem to the leaders in particular. It hinders them from exercising their personal interests, right? So their only option is to ignore it and do what they like. No one questions them because they are the rules. Wow, this thank you so much, Slim Joa. This is actually quite an interesting observation, which I think we then need to address, issues to do with accountability that Takunda has spoken about. Well done, Sibo. Keep pushing, Vari. These are comments that are coming through. And as we round up this conversation, Takunda, I'm going to give you the mic first. Now what? people we know that it's a human right, but the environment is just not relenting. What's next? What do we tell our young people? What do we tell our women? What do we tell our leaders right now as we go towards 2023?
I think it's time as citizens that we reclaim our voice. I think the environment is ripe for citizens to demand their space, in the political and socio-economic environment. And I think once we as citizens achieve this, we will be able to hold perpetrators, for example, of human rights violations to account. We will be able to hold state institutions to account. I think over the last couple of years, for example, there've been, I think, positive indications that once citizens join together and hold state institutions to account, the government is normally forced to act in a manner that we as citizens demand. I think we as citizens need to reclaim our voice, be it on human rights issues, be it on women issues. I think this is the time, and 2023 is not so far away, and we need to hold state institutions and political parties accountable.
Right. Your last words as well, Sibo, as we look at 2023 going on.
Okay, to the young people, elections are not won via social media. Yes, we can tweet, yes, we can Facebook, but go out, register to vote, and make sure that you do vote. And it's not a crime for you to even desire to be a candidate. So please, yes, we can make the noise we want, we can make the contributions we want, but go get out your vote. Like I said, one vote is what gives a win. Just one, not 1%. one vote gives a win to an election. And to the women, we've got the numbers. So let's do this. Let's support each other. Let's push for our. If you see that in the political parties, there isn't 50% of the women within let's start making noise within our political parties. Let's make noise until we see that we are well represented. And to the general population of Zimbabwe, elections are almost here. Yes, you can go get out your vote. Your vote is your right. Your vote is your power.
Right.
So you then are able to make so much noise and actually contest whatever decisions are made when you know you have participated. But if you don't do that, if you go with apathy, if you boycott, you have done no justice to yourself. Let's speak out. Let's raise our voices. Let's register to vote and let's vote.
Excellent. And Varaizo?
Okay, my message to the young women in Zimbabwe is to go out in our numbers to register and vote. And when the voting comes, let us also go again and vote for our fellow women so that we can be able to increase the number of women in leadership positions. And we should always know that it is our right to demand accountability. It is our right to be involved in decision making and leadership processes so that our voices and our thoughts can be counted and then suit or tailor make what we want into law so that our rights can be respected as women.
Excellent. And on that parting note, I want to thank you, my panelists, Varaizo, Sibo, and Takunda, for joining me for this conversation.
You're welcome.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. And thanks to all of you who participated. Kwanzi, thanks, Takunda, very profound. Thank you, Takunda. True Sibopa ground dopa neyese. Slim comes through. The other thing, we need to be united as citizens. I think Takunda, really dug deep into the importance of uniting as a citizenry to demand accountability, to demand action. And Munamato Chachikobo says, well done, Whispers, for educating, empowering, and grooming young women. Madzimaya Anama Resources, this is Peshe Kushanisa pa ground. Please, waupe, uyai muti dzidzise mabasa emaoko. Thank you so much. Thanks to all of you who came through with your contributions. We really, really appreciate that. And before we close this show, I just want to encourage you, if you haven't registered to vote, go and register to vote. You can still vote in 2023, but you have to register before the pronouncement of the next date, because 2 days after the pronouncement, voter registration closes. I know a lot of people were asking about the delimitation exercise that has been taking, or that is taking place. We're supposed to check our names in the voters' roll. Then afterwards, based on the number of registrants in the voters' roll by a cutoff date, should be 30 June, ZEC is going to use that list to delimitate the constituencies, but it doesn't stop you from registering to vote. So please, let's continue to register to vote. Your vote is your voice. So let us begin to participate. Now, Understanding Democracy Conversations is going to be coming to you every Wednesday from 12:30 to 1:30, tentatively, but within that period, that's when we are going to be bringing these conversations. And so please invite others. If you want to partner with us, you can get in touch with us via our social media handles so that we are also able to continue bringing these conversations to your table. Thank you so much, Zimbabwe, for tuning in. Thank you for contributing to this conversation. Thank you for making it lively. And thank you for liking, sharing, and partnering with us. God bless you and have yourselves a wonderful rest of the day.